Good morning, everybody. My name is Ulla Næsby, and I am the director of Danida Fellowship Center. And this morning we are hosting an online information meeting about a new program called the Knowledge and Innovation Program, which was just launched a week ago in a joint collaboration between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Minister for Education and Research in Denmark. So welcome to the online meeting. There's a lot of interest for this meeting. We have 500 people who have signed in. I'm not quite sure if we have 500 people online now, but people may come later. We expect and we welcome questions, and we have also reserved about half an hour at the end of the program to actually answer all of your questions. So please write your questions as we go along in the chat. To allow time to answer as many questions as possible, we will only give room to written questions. So what is happening is that we have muted all the participants in this online meeting except for those who are presenting. So if you want to pose a question to us, kindly write it in the chat and we will take them from there. And at the end of the program, we will go through it and we will try to answer as many questions as possible within the time that we have. You can see here on the screen now the program for today. And we are going to start in a very few seconds with an overview of the new university program, which, like I said, was launched at what is called the People's Folkemøde, the People's Meeting at an island here in Denmark last week, where lots of people come together and discuss democracy and all kinds of things. And the minister, who is in the blue here with the microphone on the down left-hand side corner, she launched the program. This is the Minister for Education and Research in Denmark. So I'm going to pass the floor to Tove Degnbol, who is the head of the Department for Learning and Quality Assurance in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And Tove is going to give us a broad overview of the program. So Tove, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ulla. And as Ulla said, this program is a collaboration between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Higher Education and Science. And the background for the meeting is the Africa Century Strategy, which was launched last year in August by the government. It's a strategy with the overall vision of bringing Danish decision makers and Danish people closer to African decision makers and African people in a range of areas, including business cooperation, cooperation on climate change, but also people's cooperation and cooperation in the field of education, higher education and science. So as part of this strategy, Africa Century, there's a particular focus on the interaction between universities in Denmark and in countries in Africa. The background is that many students from Africa go to universities in countries such as France, UK, Germany, and also outside Europe, China, US, Russia, whereas so far, relatively few students study in Danish universities. It is part of this vision to change this, to increase the cooperation between the universities, but also to have more students from African countries studying in Denmark. In the strategy, there is a strong focus on equal partnerships, which is also something that we have tried to consider as much as possible in the preparation of this new program. It's in line with the African Union's Agenda 2063. So we also want to align with strategies and principles, policies in the countries that we are cooperating with. There's a strong emphasis on mutual understanding, the fact that if people come together and study together and work together in universities, there will also be a better understanding of each other's societies, and we will all benefit from it. We will learn and our partners will learn. And as I said, and it's underlined in the last point here, we will try to make the conditions for more African students to go to Denmark. So these are the main points of the program, and then the two components or outcomes, if you want, is that there's a partnership component, which is very much the cooperation between universities in Denmark and in African countries with the Danish embassy. And we will give examples of the kind of activities that can be applied for under this outcome. And then the other one is skills development, which with a strong emphasis on African students going to Denmark. There, concerning the budget, the first outcome has a budget of Danish kroners 90 million. And the second budget, which is the most expensive, as you can see, is 340 million Danish kroners, adding up to a total budget cost of 430 million over 8 years from 25 to 2032. And then comes all the details of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tove. I am going now to pass the floor to Karen Høj Obling, who is a head of section in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, also in the Department of Learning, and she is going to give us a little bit more details about the program. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ulla. I am just going to briefly walk you through the different funding modalities under the Knowledge and Innovation Program. It can be split into two sections: partnership projects, and then also Erasmus funding for Erasmus actions. And first of all, we have partnerships between one, could also be two Danish universities, and one or preferably more universities in an African country with a Danish embassy. So this is under outcome one. There's a maximum of 4 primary partners, and at least one of them has to be Danish. There's a budget of 3 million per primary partners, and the partnership projects can last for a total of, or the funding for the projects can last for a total of 5 years. Preferably, the partnerships will continue long after that. In addition to this, it's also possible to apply for funding for scholarships for students from African partner universities for short-term or full degree stays in Denmark. There's a funding cap of 25 million for this, and the scholarships can last until 7 years or up until mid 32. It is also possible to apply for seed funding in case there are some partners who want to get to know each other more and who want to develop the concepts for their partnership projects further. And it's possible to apply for seed funding in the first 2 calls. And I should also say that applications for both partnerships, for the partnership projects will be open in 2025, 26, and 27, with opportunities to apply for scholarships a bit longer. And in terms of the support for the Erasmus actions, we are providing support for top-up grants to Erasmus Plus scholarships for African students studying in Denmark. There's also a seed funding grant for establishing more or new international credit mobility agreement under which students can come on exchange. There's also a last seed funding to prepare applications to the European Union's capacity building in higher education programs. And for the Erasmus part, it's important to note that we are following the European Union's framework, so it's possible for all Danish higher education institutions to apply for these grants. And it's also possible to partner with all countries in Africa and not just countries in Africa with a Danish embassy. Yes, so I think I'm not going to rest too much on this slide, because I think a good starting point for all partnerships is really to start with shared interest. And of course, it has to be, partnerships have to define activities and outputs together that are centered around their expertise. And then, as Tove also mentioned, that and also it's a red thread in our Africa strategy and also the program. Equal partnership is really key for this program, and especially in the partnership project. projects. Institutionally, it's a good thing to anchor it at the daily core of education, business, and research by faculty members. And then just lastly, to say that the program does not fund research directly, but it is possible to apply for funding to develop bigger research applications together. And then, of course, there are other funding opportunities within that DFC manages for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where you can apply for funding for collaborative research projects. If we go to the next slide, we just wanted to give you a few examples of what can be funded under outcome 1 under the partnership activities. And I'm not going to dwell too much on them. I know you can read the full list in the program document and also in the call text, but these are just some of the examples. It could be development of joint master degree programs, joint courses, development of curriculums or courses. Could also be to sort of have an exchange between scholars and administrative admin staff from both Denmark to Africa and vice versa. Could be creation of knowledge hubs, platforms, etc. It could be also there's a 10%. Partnerships can apply for up to 10% to provide, for instance, different kinds of equipment. Could be lab equipment, library research systems, etc. And it's important to note that the list we have is not an exhaustive list. Partnerships may come up with activities that we have not come up with that fits into their project and their concepts. And in case you have any doubts whether this sort of falls into the framework of the program, please reach out to DFC and inquire. Good. If we go to the next slide, these are sort of the 3 seed funding opportunities that I don't think I have to go in deeper into, but basically 3 different seed funding grants to either develop a partnership project or to prepare credit mobility agreement or capacity building in higher education proposal for a later call. I should perhaps mention that the seed funding for the partnership project, should be developed with the aim of applying for a later call for applications under the program. Good. So examples of activities under outcome 2. This could be different kinds of scholarships. Could be scholarship for English language 2-year full master degrees. Could be full master degree programs combined in Denmark and partner institutions in an African country. Could be for African students to go on short-term study stays at the partner institution in Denmark. And then it could also be summer schools for African students in Denmark. And all of this has to be based on credits. And then lastly, we also have the top up for the Erasmus Plus scholarship for African students. And then I'm going to pass the floor over to Ida to give a bit more detail on the how to apply part of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, for this in detail description of what the project and program contains. So the next speaker is Ida Sandager Arendal, who is a consultant with Danida Fellowship Center, and she's going to give you details about how to actually apply for this program. So Ida, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I will go a little bit more into the practical details regarding how you can actually go about applying for these funds. And this is just a brief reminder. Karen just went through the possible modalities. We will focus mostly, or I will focus mostly on the 3 top modalities on this list. So the partnership projects with or without scholarships, and then the possibility for seed funding as well. But of course, also tell you a little bit about how to go about the Erasmus track as well. But firstly, who can apply? As we have also mentioned already, it is for practical reasons, the application must come or be submitted by a Danish university for partnership projects and seed funding projects. But of course, in a collaboration with a partner consortium. Let me just have a look. So we operate, and some of you might know about this already, with what we call primary partners. These are the partners that consist of universities in Denmark and universities in the eligible African countries. For the partnership projects, these are African countries with a Danish embassy. You will find a complete list of what countries these are in the call text on our website and also in the application system itself. What we call secondary partners are a kind of different way of contributing into a project as well. And for secondary partners, you might include partners that come from also outside African countries with the Danish embassy. Other places, they can also be other partners than university partners. Thank you. And then what you can apply for once you have your partnership together, the partnership must consist of at least one Danish university in an African country with a Danish embassy, and can be up to 4 primary partners in a partnership. The partnership activities that Karen went through, of course, can be funded. Also, exchange of staff. There's also the possibility of setting aside a small amount of money for equipment at the African partner universities, primary partner universities, up to a maximum of 10% of that university's share of the total budget. Then there is the possibility to include funds that cover preparation of research proposals, but not research itself. Then there is also dissemination of various research results or other relevant dissemination activities. And then finally, there is this possibility of including scholarship activities into a partnership project as well. And there are also things, of course, and none of these lists are exhaustive, of course. I would really urge you all to go to the DFC website and read our call and go to our online application system and check out what are the possibilities and requirements in full. But research activities cannot be funded under this program. You can also not fund equipment at the Danish partner universities. And you cannot fund scholarships for Danish students who might be going to Africa to study. And this is because these funds are part of the Danish development aid, and it's not possible for us to spend money on the other, the exchange the other way. Hopefully that can be funded through other channels. It's quite important to keep in mind when you prepare your applications that the expectation is for applications to be developed at faculty level, close to the scientific or thematic field of the application. But it must be signed off, and it must be signed off at university management level, the rectorate level. But it's possible to submit several applications from the same university, both as sort of the Danish primary partner university, but also as an African primary partner university. It's possible to be involved in several applications in the same call. And the ceiling for applications for scholarship activities within these partnerships will be 25 million DKK. But it's also possible to apply for additional funding down the line for scholarship activities based on an existing partnership, ongoing partnership projects. And there are, of course, some overheads included as well, and we want to address those here. For the partnership project parts, where you can apply between 2 to 4 primary university partners for a partnership projects, there is the possibility of including up to 20% in overhead for each of the involved institutions. For the scholarship parts, when applying for the scholarship funds attached to a partnership, there is an administration fee of 4.5% for the Danish institutions. And in addition to this, there is the possibility to set aside a small amount of money as well for salaries at your African partner universities. The idea is, of course, scholarship funds will mainly go to cover study stays in Denmark and receiving African students at the Danish university. Yeah, I think thank you. And just to mention the Erasmus track as well. We also had a presentation last week, and the Erasmus track is targeted existing modalities existing in the European Commission. So these are open for higher education institutions in Denmark and aligned with the European Commission's list of countries in Africa, meaning all of the African countries can be included in these. Karen already gave an overview of what is contained in the Erasmus track. So the top-up stipends are top-ups for existing stipends given by the EU and can be channeled through a Danish higher education institution to students they receive through their mobility agreements and covered by the Erasmus program. The same goes for the seed funds, where Danish higher education institutions can apply for small funds to develop new mobility agreements with potential partners, again, in all African countries. And then finally, the seed funds as well for the EU capacity building in higher education tracks is also open for all Danish higher education institutions. For all of this, there's holding an Erasmus Charter for higher education, which is a requirement from the European Commission as well. But just to say, these are the groups of institutions that are eligible to apply directly to DFC for funds under the Erasmus aligned track in the Knowledge and Innovation Program. And the two different parts of the program also is aligned with one for the partnership projects with or without scholarship funds. We launched the call on 13th of June, so last Friday, and the deadline for applications for these types of funds will be 1st of October at 1 p.m. or 13 hours Danish time. There will be, of course, a process after that for selecting which projects will be funded. And then the expected start date for these projects will be 1st of January 2026. For the Erasmus Plus modalities, there is an ongoing deadline. So applications can be submitted on an ongoing basis and will be assessed by DFC on an ongoing basis as well. Thank you. And to apply for the funds, you, of course, need to identify who are involved in the partnerships, which institutions will be involved as part of the primary partner group, possible secondary partners. We have a call text on the DFC website, which you can read through, see what the exact requirements will be. And we urge you also to, as early as possible in the process, to create your account and also an application in our online application system, SurveyMonkey Apply. We only accept applications that are submitted through SurveyMonkey Apply. And the application should be created in the system by the prospective sort of coordinator for the future project. And this person should have an affiliation with the institution in Denmark, which will end up kind of being the contracting primary partner of the consortium of partners. You are able to invite collaborators in the system. So once you have your application you can send out email invitations to your collaborators at your own or other institutions, so that everyone can access and edit your application as well. We also ask you to provide endorsements through the online application system. You do this via an email to the right signatory. It will be clear from all the material in there who is that person, but it might be the rectorate at your institution. So please set aside a bit of time to get these endorsements. Endorsements can only be requested once you have finalized most of the details of your application. Obviously, the endorsement is a signature from the right mandate of the institution to say the institution is aware of this application and the content of it. So we need you to have filled in the budget and the details of partner consortium and content of the project before you can ask for this. So bear in mind that, plan a little bit ahead so you don't end up missing a deadline because you are missing an endorsement from the right person. For the Erasmus track, it's more or less the same as well. You also submit through SurveyMonkey Apply. And in there, you can see what documentation we need from you. Once you enter the system, SurveyMonkey Apply, you will have the opportunity to look through programs. Those of you who might already be familiar with our system might already have a profile in SurveyMonkey Apply and might have filled out what is called an eligibility test in the system, where you are asked, who are you? What are you looking for funding to? Regardless of what your response is in this test, you should be able to view the Knowledge and Innovation Program related program. It's called programs in SurveyMonkey Apply as well, but all the opportunities for applying for funding. It'll look somewhat like this. And then you can, of course, go through, start an application. You can start as many applications as you wish. You can start multiple applications as well.
Thank you, Ida. And also thank you again to Tove and Karen before her. We have a number of questions. There are many, and I'm going to try to see if I can group them a little bit in different questions. So there is many questions about what are the eligible countries. Very broadly, Tove, would you like to answer that question?
Eligible countries in Africa are countries with a Danish embassy, and you'll find a list of all these countries on the DFC webpage. It's also clearly spelled out in the program document. And this is for practical purposes. It is our expectation that we will need a lot of cooperation with our embassies on the logistics, not least, concerning visa and so on for students who will travel from African countries to Denmark, but also in terms of the wider partnership that the Danish embassies will play a role. So eligible countries in Africa are countries with a Danish embassy. Then countries in Africa which do not have a Danish embassy can be secondary partners, as Ida explained, in the partnership component, not for the scholarships, but in the partnership component. And then there was a question about what are the eligible institutions also. So they are universities for the partnership component. It is universities in countries in Africa with a Danish embassy and universities in Denmark. Higher education institutions can be part of the Erasmus part. So maybe we have not really managed, I can see from the questions, to clearly explain that there is a program with two main components concerning the university partnership and scholarships where African students study in Denmark. And then there's another one, which is helping the existing EU arrangements, fund application possibilities, supporting some of these, including the Erasmus scholarship, where currently the Erasmus stipends for students are so low that many students will have to give up applying for them. We will top up so that they correspond to what we are paying in the partnership for the scholarships in the overall program. So higher education institutions in Denmark and in Africa can be part of the Erasmus part, or they could be secondary partners as another possibility. And did you ask me to respond to more, Ulla? It was the eligibility issue.
I would like to perhaps for you to elaborate a little bit about what are the functions of those secondary partners, because
Okay,
that's
yes.
also a question. Please.
Yes. Yeah, well, there have been some questions about the civil society, private companies and so on. And we do see a very obvious and positive role of secondary partners in the partnership programs. For instance, civil society organizations in African countries and in Denmark might have experience and ideas for what could link up to some of the activities on summer schools, for instance, which can be part of the partnership activities. Private companies may have a role to play also in, say, dissemination activities. Who are the end users of some of the research projects, for instance, which cannot itself be funded by this program? We fund it elsewhere, but dissemination of results, for instance, private companies could be key actors, and there's a limit set for the role of these secondary partners. They can be up to 15% of the budget, and there are also some limitations on we cannot pay salaries for some types of the secondary partners, including the private companies. We're also not paying salaries for other European universities, but they can be part of the partnership components of the program.
There are also a number of questions regarding scholarships. Somebody is asking, are there individual scholarship opportunities? Is enrollment in a university partner a prerequisite to become a scholar? And there are also some questions about what are the budget items for scholarships. So let me answer the first two questions of that, and then I'll pass the floor to Ida about the budget items that we support for scholarships. So basically, scholarships are have to be within the partnerships that are formed. So if you have a partnership project, the scholarships are then from the African universities in that partnership to the Danish universities in that partnership. So yes, you would have to have an enrollment in a partnership university in Africa. However, there are, like Tove also said, those possibilities for top-up grants for Erasmus projects, and they are basically in all African countries that have a mobility agreement with a Danish university. So students from those universities with mobility agreements with Danish universities can apply for those Erasmus scholarships directly through the EU system that is set up for that. And then those institutions can apply to DFC for top-up for those scholarships. So in that respect, there is a little bit of a leeway for individual scholarships from all universities, but providing that they function within the EU mobility agreement system. Ida, for the scholarships that are going to be provided within the partnerships between the Danish university and a number of African universities, what are the budget items that can be covered in those scholarships?
So the scholarship part of the partnerships, the large university partnerships, you can apply for funds to cover tuition fees at the Danish university, expenses for travel for African students, help to cover visa fee and insurance while they are here, and also a grant to cover housing and living expenses while they are in Denmark. Also language tests, which might be a prerequisite as well when coming to study in Denmark. Other than that, the scholarship can include as I mentioned, a limited amount of money to cover salaries at administrative staff at the African partner universities. Some funds can also be set aside for information and communication activities. And then there is the administration fee for Danish universities of 4.5%. Audit of the final project is also covered.
Then there are some questions regarding if there are like preferred master degrees in this program, or if there are specific programs of study that are preferred.
So there are no thematic limitations as such, but of course, to receive a scholarship, you have to be part of a partnership project. But there are also no preferred master degrees or master programs that we have thought as part of this program. It is open to the partnership to decide and base their project and concepts on the collaborations and the relations that they have with partner universities in an African country with a Danish embassy.
Also, a question from many of you that says, how do we, if we are an African university, how do we actually find a Danish partner? Will anybody help us find a Danish university partner? And there are also questions surrounding the questions about, will younger universities have a priority in the program? So, Karen, do you care to perhaps continue in this vein?
We are not sort of seeing any role for neither DFC or the ministry as such as a matchmaker between universities in Africa and universities in Denmark. But since this is really we emphasize a lot the strong relations and the sort of equal partnerships. It's really important for many of the prospective partnerships. It will be key to sort of work perhaps on already existing relations and build on existing relations to really develop these strong partnerships. Of course, it's also possible for new partners to enter into the program. This could be, for instance, this could be a case where you could develop a seed fund application together with the Danish university if there's a shared interest. So as such, there is, as with the Danish universities, as the contracting partners, it's really based a lot on the existing relations and new relations that can be established between African universities in partner countries and the Danish universities that we have in Denmark.
Under the program's emphasis on mutual learning and intercultural exchange, the participation of Danish students in activities hosted in Africa, such as summer schools, is equally important. And while the scholarship component primarily supports African student mobility, could you clarify which expenses, if any, would be eligible for activities in Africa that include Danish student participation, such as a jointly organized summer school at the African partner university? Ida, would you care to perhaps answer this question?
It is possible to cover some costs for the establishment and hosting of summer schools taking place in Africa, at a partner university in Africa. What cannot be covered through this program is costs for Danish students traveling to the summer school in Africa. So travel costs, per diems, all of these related costs that might be involved when a Danish student travels to an African partner university to attend a summer school would not be able to be covered. But everything else regarding having the summer school and establishing the summer school in collaboration can be included within a partnership project.
An additional question that I'm going to read from our questions here. It's also budget related, and therefore I'm also going to ask Ida to reply to this. The question is, can the additional partner also benefit from the 20% overhead for partnership activities? And is the Danish university overhead also capped at 20%? When we talk about additional partner here, I assume that we are talking secondary partners, but Ida, perhaps you can just explain the 20% overhead concept within the partnership element of the Knowledge and Innovation Program.
Sure. So secondary partners will not be eligible to receive any overhead. So secondary partners' involvement in a project is quite different from primary partners. They can only be involved for what we call direct costs, meaning covering salaries and travel costs for individuals from that partner institution. There is another limitation as well. Actually, I might want to mention that if the secondary partner is a private for-profit company, salaries can also not be covered. Then you can only include costs for travels for anyone participating in activities from that partner institution. So yeah, basically there's no overhead or administration costs. It's more kind of a direct input.
There are also a number of questions regarding, again, the scholarships, and many people are asking, where do I apply for a scholarship? Can I apply directly for a scholarship? And I again have to underline that as a student in Africa, you cannot apply directly for a scholarship into this program. So if you have to apply through your university, who becomes eventually a partner in this program. So if you are a student at a university which will join in a partnership with the Danish university in this program, then potentially you can receive the scholarship, but it would be your university together with the Danish university who would set the requirements, what will be the scholarships that they want to offer, and what would be the requirements required by the students to enter into this program. So it will all be in a partnership, and it will all be in that thematic theme that those universities in that partnership have decided to work on. So what is the global challenge that they want to try to solve together? And so it's not necessarily sure that anybody from any university can get a scholarship, but it would be within that thematic theme for that partnership project. Good. I am going to look into more of the questions here. And one of the questions is, how many African universities can be included in one application? Karen and Tove, could you kindly answer that question?
But for a partnership project, there can be a maximum of 3 African universities as primary partners. There's a maximum of a total of 4 primary partners, and at least one has to be Danish. It's also possible to have 2 Danish universities as primary partners and 2 African universities as primary partners.
There is a question that says, can partnership projects focus on a single education, a single master's program in a specific topic, or are they meant to be broader? Tove, would you care to answer that question?
Well, the expectation is that the partnership is not directly related to the scholarship activities. The scholarship can be one master program, but for partnership activities, it is the expectation that this will be a bit broader. It can still center around the same theme as the master program is built on, but we do encourage that you use your imagination a bit and draw on experiences, your own and others, in order to make a good and solid partnership program. And maybe I'll use this occasion also to highlight one thing which we may have not communicated so clearly, that it is a condition that for a scholarship program that there is a master partnership. No, sorry. It's a condition for the scholarship program that there's a partnership program activities also. Yep. So that you cannot only apply for the scholarship program without having the partnership activities, unless you already have a well-established partnership, one Danish university with a university eligible in Africa, and you already have partnership activities. And you can document that they fall within the descriptions in the program document of what are expected here. Then you can apply only for a scholarship program. Otherwise, you will. The idea is, instead of having master students just studying sort of in isolation, individually scattered around Danish universities, it's so important that these scholarships are built into a partnership. I just wanted to underline this.
Thank you, Tove. There is a question here that says, are public agencies eligible as secondary partners? Would you care to also answer that?
Yeah, in principle, yes. If there are good arguments for having a public agency, then that could be considered. It concerns all the secondary partners proposed that it's really important to explain their role in the program, not just that it might be a good thing to have a civil society organization or a public agency without specifying their particular role, but it is possible.
Does the 25 million DKK cap per application apply regardless of the number of partners? Ida, would you kindly just try to explain the cap, because there is a cap on the partnership activity part and there is a cap on the scholarship part. So could you just in more detail explain what is the cap on the partnership part and what is the cap on the scholarship part of a joint project proposal?
Sure, I can do that. And we have also tried to explain it as best we can in the call text itself. But basically, the partnership component, which is, as Tove mentioned, the core of the scholarships as well, is a cap of 6 million DKK if 2 partners are involved, and an additional 3 million DKK for each additional partner, up to a maximum of 12 million Danish kroner if 4 partner universities are involved in the partnership. For the scholarship part, there is just an overall cap of 25 million DKK to apply for in total within a partnership that applies for scholarship activities, or someone applying for scholarship activities based on an existing partnership. So this is how things are looking in this current call that we are now, in the midst of. This program is, of course, a completely new initiative, and we are not afraid of taking learning points into consideration as we go along. But the cap right now is 25 million DKK for scholarship activities. As I mentioned in my presentation as well, it is possible to apply for some funds in this round, both for partnership and scholarship activities. And it's also possible to apply in subsequent call rounds for additional funds for scholarship, for instance.
Thank you, Ida. There's another question here about the language tests for students from English-speaking countries, because Danish universities require that you pass a professional level language test before you enter into the study programs here. Ida, would you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. To my knowledge, it's a requirement that most Danish universities have, at least for when applying for a full master's degree at a Danish university, to pass a TOEFL or similar professional language English test. It's not within the scope or mandate of this program or the kind of ministries involved to accept anyone from these requirements. The universities set up their requirements for submitting students into their master programs. And at a national level as well, there's of course also legislation in terms of how do you then select the students that are to study, especially a full degree program in Denmark, and those cannot be exempted for. So we cannot impact the requirements that are set at the Danish universities and institutions in terms of submission into the learning programs they offer.
Thank you, Ida. Tove and Karen, there is a question here regarding equitable partnerships. It says that if we could please elaborate on how equity will be assessed in practice, because the call very much emphasizes that there must be equitable partnerships, and how will this equity be assessed in practice? Tove, perhaps you could introduce a little bit also the concept of the selection committee that we have, and
Yes.
how we're going to evaluate the projects that we will receive.
Yes, thank you, Ulla. There's a selection committee established with 5 members, and we have made an effort also there to be sure to have South experience or African experience represented in the selection committee. This is the committee which will read through all the applications and make a very thorough assessment based on some criteria where you also see the criteria in the call text for granting the funds, and then they will decide on this. We are not sitting there ourselves. We from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a position as observer, and the same goes for the Ministry of Higher Education and Science. So it's the selection committee with the composition that you can see, which will make the decisions. One of the things that they will carefully consider is if the application reflects that all partners have been involved in preparing it. What we really want to avoid is having applications from Danish universities where there are just a list of names of those on the African side having been involved, but where it's not really clear that these priorities are also reflecting priorities of the African universities. So this is a main criteria. Have these things been prepared jointly? The argument or the idea of having seed funding also relates to this. We do not want to see hastily prepared applications where one of the partners have taken the lead and the other one have not been fully involved. So then rather, if you do not already have these connections, know each other well, then do apply for seed funding to establish the partnership with a view to make sure that all interests and agendas are reflected. Concerning the activities as such, we are welcoming activities which also take place in African universities in the partnership part. It should not be mainly activities in Denmark and African participants flying to Denmark to be part of this. We would like to see also, for instance, Danish lecturers lecturing in African universities, summer schools being held in African countries, not just in Denmark. A number of activities relating to developing a new curriculum in African universities, etc. So, and again, it's not just the geographical location of the activities, but reflecting that the agendas of the African universities which participate is strongly considered. In the scholarship part, what we would also certainly encourage is that it's not only about African students learning from the programs that they're following, but also that there is an exchange of experience. What we understand from the African students already studying in the pilot master program that we have is that they have a lot to give to the environment, to other students and to the lecturers. They come up with examples of which provide substance to the master programs, and they are not just receivers of knowledge; they are exchanging knowledge. So these are some of the things that we will consider strongly in the assessment of the applications.
Thank you, Tove. There is also a question here regarding the synergies between this program and research funds that are also provided by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for development research, and also comes up in calls with that Danida Fellowship Center is administering. And it says here that to have proper problem-based collaborative learning and innovation, it needs to go well with research. Collaboration on an actual challenge is a great way to have a partnership focus, uniting both research and learning. but how do timelines actually align between this program and research calls? And perhaps also in that vein, why can research projects not be funded through this program? What are the other avenues for that type of funding? Tove, would you care to also elaborate on that?
Yes, I do appreciate the question, because we certainly would encourage that all these streams run together. I do see that the experience and the partnerships which are developed out of joint research are already strong and good partnerships, and it's an obvious starting point for further elaborating a partnership that you have a joint research project. Yeah, the reason why we have separated is that we have another program grant modality for supporting the research collaboration, the FFU grants. It's 250 million Danish kroner per year. And if we started to fund research activities within this program, we would quickly exhaust the funds so that we couldn't use them for partnerships and scholarships. So the idea is that there are other avenues, other modalities for applying for research collaborations outside this program, and therefore we did not put direct research in this. What is possible in this program is to prepare joint research programs, either for us, for Danida, or for instance, EU or others, and also for dissemination of research findings. We have some experience already with this on how to create synergies between research grants in one program and then another program which is focusing on something else. We have the Building Stronger Universities program, which is also not funding larger research activities itself, but fund capacity development in selected universities in African countries. And here we're happy to see that this collaboration often generate also joint research applications and funding for that from the other modality. And even better, many of those partners involved have already had research projects together funded by this other line, and then they do the joint activities in the capacity development of the Building Stronger University program. So this is also what we hope to see in this.
Thank you, Tove. There are a number of questions on the whole Erasmus track of this program. Questions regarding not only the top-up funding for Erasmus scholarships, but also the seed funding for mobility programs and the seed funding to apply for the larger EU programs on capacity building in higher education. So Ida, you mentioned in the very beginning that there was a presentation last week, and that was a presentation which was made directly for the Danish higher education institutions. So it's not available, and it's not available in English. But could you here, please, just give us an overview of what are those 3 tracks in the Erasmus different mobility schemes that we can support?
Sure. So the 3 funding opportunities in the Erasmus track are tied to, as we spoke about previously, top-up funds to cover additional funds for individual students coming to Denmark already on an Erasmus Plus scholarship from the Ministry of Higher Education and Science. And then seed fundings, it's 50,000 DKK to cover travel costs between Danish higher education institutions and potential partner institutions in Africa, with the aim of establishing new credit mobility agreement between the 2 institutions, which are the prerequisite for applying for the Erasmus Plus scholarships for students coming to Denmark. So we're only talking about students coming here on an exchange within an exchange program. Exchange programs through a bilateral agreement between a Danish institution and an institution in Africa. And these two funding opportunities falls within the outcome 2 part of the Knowledge and Innovation Program, which are scholarships and funds to strengthen the avenues through which African students are able to attend studies in Denmark. Then there is the opportunity to apply for up to 200,000 DKK for seed funds that are aimed at developing an application for the European Commission's capacity building in higher education. I know there is some lingo here that might not really be easy to understand for those who are not already involved in the European Commission different actions. But that falls within outcome 1 of establishing partnerships between institutions in Denmark and institutions in Africa. And that is a different track. And I see someone also mentioning this. This also spreads out over 2 different actions or funding possibilities within the EU system, which also talks about the scholarship parts for students, and staff mobility is not involved in the Knowledge and Innovation Program funding for the EU track. But that is key action 1 for student mobility. And then there's something called key action 2, which is the partnership elements of the European Commission funding. And that is where the capacity building in higher education program falls under, and we provide seed fundings to establish and develop partnership and the application for the European Commission. This is mainly, as mentioned, something that is of interest to Danish higher education institutions. And I think I've already included a link in the chat, but in the end of this, we'll also include a link to the Danida Fellowship website, where you will find information about all of these things. So you can read more about what are the different funding opportunities, how do you apply, who is eligible to apply. And if you are in doubt about anything, you can, of course, always reach out to us as well. We have also a Knowledge and Innovation Program email address that you can contact at DFC.
Thank you, Ida. There's an interesting question here about can partnership and scholarship projects include lifelong learning elements? For example, building lifelong learning programs at African universities for lifelong learning of local organizations, industries, civil society organizations, etc. Karen, would you care to answer that question?
Yes, I think that's the very short answer.
Yes.
But yes, there's no reason why it shouldn't.
The programs can also include
Lifelong learning elements. Yes.
Definitely. I'm very happy with the very many questions. Some of the questions that you have here are very, very detailed. And we are in the fortunate situation that we are still developing the general conditions which is going to include all the very nitty-gritty details that the universities need to know when they have to implement these projects. So with all these questions, we can also sort of see what do we need to include as information in those general conditions that are now being revised, and they will be available on the web page from the 1st of July. So we will make sure that some of these very detailed questions that we may not be able to answer right now will be included. So information about this will be included in the general conditions, so that you will be able to go in there and find the detailed, the answer to the detailed questions about overheads, about percentages for equipment, about which universities are included in the secondary partnership definition, and so on and so on. So I'm not going to go into very much detail about these right now. I'm going to ask Tove, Karen, and Ida and just Are there things you think that we should have covered that we haven't covered yet? Are there questions that you've seen in the chat that you think we need to answer? Is there things that we may not have, that you feel that we may not have covered entirely in our program so far that we should that we should cover now before we end? So kindly let me know.
There are 2 points that I would like to be sure that we have answered. One is I've seen a number of questions about the role of Danish students, especially since we talk about exchange and so on, and then quickly we switch to talk about African students receiving scholarships for studies in Denmark. Danish students can participate in, for instance, summer schools organized in an African university. But we have a set of conditions for using development cooperation funds, and these are, this budget is development cooperation funds. We're not allowed to pay for Danish students to go abroad and have training in other institutions. We can allow the participation, which we really do, and we also encourage it. But we have to refer Danish students to apply for funding from elsewhere, for instance, from the universities or for private foundations and from elsewhere. We would very much like to have a both-way traffic and not just from Africa to Denmark. But there are some limitations set by the fact that we're using development cooperation funds in this. Then, but at the same time, I would like to stress that Danish staff from universities can go to Africa. I've mentioned before the visiting scholars, such as lecturers who go from a Danish university to teach in a university in one of the African countries. That's eligible under the program, and again, strongly encouraged. So that's one point I wanted to cover. Another one is that I'm not sure that in the answer to the question about the limit set at 25 million for each partnership in the scholarship program, that it was clear that one university can apply for several projects. If you have a big university and you have several activities at faculty level, you can apply for more than one project, and then that'll add up to something larger. And you can, of course, coordinate your projects among you so that they fit together and you have some interdisciplinary aspects and all that. It's just that for each application, the limit is 25 million for the scholarship part.
Thank you, Tove. Tove, there's also a question here that says, are there any concerns regarding the international ranking of the universities that will be involved in the application on both sides?
No, there is not. We will not be deciding based on international rankings. I've seen another question asking the opposite. Will we particularly encourage universities with less track record for international cooperation? And we don't do any of this. We will actually leave it to the universities to establish partnerships and apply together, and we will not sit and orchestrate who can apply and who should join these partnerships. And as Karen said, we're also not making the matchmaking. We provide the funds. We establish some conditions under which you can find each other and then apply. But we do not have a ranking or a way that we want this to turn out.
Thank you, Tove. And there's also a question about whether the younger universities would be prioritized. And to that too, no, but of course we would encourage all universities in Denmark and in Africa that are more experienced and have many years of experience to also include in the partnerships some of the younger universities to give them a chance to be participants. Thank you. Somebody is asking if we will make a fact site for our detailed question, and as I mentioned before, we will try to answer all these detailed questions into our general conditions where you will be able to read these. We can also provide information about the 8 Danish universities, how to perhaps just links to their websites. We can do that in our information material as well, so that you know which ones to contact. If you are an African university, you will see the list of which are the 8 Danish universities, and then try to get in touch with them.
Really highly encourage the joint development of, for instance, master programs where partnerships develop courses and a full program together, where students, for instance, can take part of their degree in an African university and another part of their degree at the Danish university. So there's really like this good exchange. And I think also to underline the fact that, you know, we've included also the seed funding for international credit mobility agreement, also with a light to hopefully, you know, when the partnerships are well established, in some years there will also be greater interest from, or greater possibilities for Danish students to take part of their education at an African university. So it's really also something that the partnerships are encouraged to work on, these bilateral exchange agreement somewhere down the line, because of course it's highly recommended that there's a two-way exchange, although we are not able to fund the Danish students going to Africa.
You can. I think it's also extremely important to just underline that you saw the list of possible activities that could be funded under the partnership projects, but I think it's very important to underline that, you know, the possibilities are many. I think they have to be well argued in the project proposal, but it's really for the partners in the partnership to try to define what would make sense for them. What is it that they need to be able to collaborate well? What is it that they need to be able to have that exchange of knowledge, to have that collaboration around innovation? And then many activities I think can be funded, but it's you need to argue well, why is this necessary for the achievements that you want to, the objectives that you want to achieve.
Most likely some of you will be sitting with the feeling that your question wasn't responded to, or not sufficiently responded to. So again, please do get in touch. There is a question on whether PhD students which receive a salary in Denmark can be included as teachers on a summer school program, as staff under that part. I don't see an issue with that, since a scholarship, or sorry, a summer school program or summer school would be included in the partnership activity part of the program, which does cover the possibility of staff mobility, and that is, I mean, if you're there attending as a teacher, then you would be considered staff in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you. There's also a question that says, can we get a list of existing partnerships that we can join as secondary partners if we cannot establish new partnerships? And I have to say that there are currently, I'm sure, some existing partnerships between Danish universities and African universities. Of course there are, but within this program, there are not yet existing partnerships having funding from this program, because this program is very new and just launched. So no, we don't have a list of existing partnerships within this program. Good. I'm running through the list, it's very long, but like Ida said, I think it's important to say that there are many questions that may not be answered directly here, and we will answer them on our website and in our general conditions.
I would like to thank you for all these good questions. I do hope that we have managed to respond to some of the main questions in this, but we have to emphasize also that we are on a journey where much of this is new to us also. We have been supporting research collaboration and support to African universities in several years, many years in fact. But it's new to us to work with the Danish universities, and we have had to try to understand also the regulation of Danish universities and so on, to see how we could best fit into this program. Luckily, we have our good partners in the Ministry of Higher Education and Science, But this is a challenge, and we may sometimes have to consider a little bit the responses to some of the very detailed questions that you give, because it's also new to us. But it has helped us a lot during the preparation that we have interacted with many of you, that you have asked us questions, you have challenged us when we thought that we had the solutions. And we would really sincerely like to thank you for this. This has become a much better program because we have had this close interaction. And thanks also for following up in this meeting.
What remains for me to say is simply thank you so much for joining our session today. So if you have further questions, kindly write to us at DFC Centra, and you will be able to find the address you can write to in the chat beside us. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Tove and to Karen from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you to Ida from Danida Fellowship Center. We look very much forward to having many, many good, exciting projects. We look very much forward to all these projects and all these exchanges resulting in a lot of dialogue, a lot of innovation, a lot of equal partnerships between Danish universities and African universities. These are all the objectives of this program, and we are very happy to be able to support your journey towards those objectives. Thank you very much, and please apply, and please remember the deadline, 1st of October.